Okay. And I'm looking, wait a moment, the recorded started, just we are waiting for Heather. Okay, and when she comes, I guess everything is okay and she will join us. So hello everyone, and sveiki, which means hello in Lithuanian, one of the oldest languages in the world. And I'd like to invite you to turn your cameras on if you have such possibility. And we'd like to see your faces and smile during this event. Yeah, Heather, hello. And I'd love you to open the chat and share the answers to the questions that you will find in it. What song or piece of music would reflect your today's mood? And while the greatest collection of music is going to emerge in our chat, there are many reasons for happiness and celebration today. The first one, we have a possibility to be a part of International Coaching Week, series of events organized annually by International Coaching Federation. Welcome to the global celebration. I do hope that the collection of songs you've chosen reflect the mood for celebration. And during International Coaching Week, we invite individuals and organizations around the world to understand, explore, and discover the possibilities offered by coaching. Yes, the second reason for happiness today is a great possibility to share happiness with people who share the same values and look for the ways to deal with the same questions. And the question that we are going to explore today is, how can leadership practices inspire genuine team engagement? And we will tackle questions of incivility at work, differences between engagement with work and engagement with people. Obstacles to create sustainable changes, and balancing between results and competition and human approach and sustainability. We invite you to think about the situations you have and to look for some thoughts that would be valuable to discuss in organizations you work in or in organizations you work with. And the thought, the last but not least reason for our happiness today, it's a possibility to share these thoughts on the mentioned topics with my colleagues, Heather Gordon-Young, who is located in Canada. So it's early morning for Heather. Good morning.
Morning.
And Heather is a coach and works on her PhD research on human flourishing at work. And another, my colleague, Brian Armstrong, who is a coach and an associate director of ICF Ireland with experience in markets in the USA, Ireland, in other countries. And a few words about myself. I'm Asipavičienė, located in Lithuania, and I'm a leadership and team coach with over 15 years of experience in management and CEO roles and 9 years experience in coaching. And balancing diverse stakeholder goals, trying to find the best ways to engage people and looking for the ways to ensure value-based approach encouraged me to look for some most efficient and confident ways. This is how I've been involved with coaching. And I will take a role of moderator today. And now all our attention goes to our guests. And I met Brian during one of team coaching courses, and we talked a lot about emotional intelligence, analyze dental markets, analyze differences and similarities of different markets. And Brian, what could be 5 or 10 the most important sentences about yourself?
Well, the first one is very nice to meet you all, and thank you for inviting me. Such an esteemed group and room full of people. Yeah, so anyhow, my name, as Gerda says, I'm Brian Armstrong. I'm an executive and team coach dedicated to helping leaders like you guys to maximize performance and personal development through improvements in productivity and all of that good stuff. I had a previous career in television in New York City. I was CNN, where I spent a fair bit of my life. And then after that, I moved to the UK and worked with the BBC in the media in a range of roles. And actually, one unknown thing about me was I was a weather presenter, amongst other things. So if things all go wrong here today and the whole thing falls over, I can give you a weather report from Ireland. But that's not going to happen. But so anyhow, I've an extensive coaching experience across multiple sectors: media, technology, and education, and like to connect with those from all walks of life. I also dabble in the world of entrepreneurship and do have a few micro businesses. But my passion is in coaching, the transformative power of coaching and working with people. So I believe I'm all in learning, continual learning, CIPD, and helping and working with others. So that's a little bit about myself. So again, thank you. And I'm looking forward to joining the panel and the discussion and interaction with you all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Brian. And Heather, we met during one team coaching course. It's not surprising, isn't it? But what is surprising that Heather has much of experience as a COO and now diving into her PhD on flourishing organizations topic. So Heather, what would be the most important sentences about yourself?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity, Gerda, for inviting me to be here. And as we said earlier, so I'm from Canada. I live on the West Coast, just out of Vancouver. I'm an organizational coach, and I'm also a PhD researcher exploring human flourishing at work, in the workplace. And just almost by way of introduction, I've spent most of my life interested in people, and I've spent more than 25 years leading different kinds of teams and organizations. And after many, many years of being unable to solve some ribbons of problems for which I had no word. So this word, workplace incivility, which is what we'll talk about a bit today, I didn't have a word for that. And I was interested in what I was observing, and also the idea of our happiness or unhappiness at work. So after 25 years of leading, I decided to leave the work of leading to explore the question, why don't we have solutions or answers, and what's going on there? So I'm now in the middle of that journey, which is lovely. I'm so grateful for all that I'm learning. I also believe very strongly that it's not acceptable for 70% of human beings to be unhappy every single day going to work. I think that's a terrible waste of humanity and human energy in a world that needs more of us so very much. So anyway, thank you for and also, I guess the other thing is I came to coaching because it's actually a tool that allowed for the application of some of these, important insights that are often academic and scholarly, but of the practical application of this work to real lives and real businesses, real people. And it also gave me a chance to rewatch 25 years of my life as a leader, and notice when coaching would have made all the difference. So anyway, I'm grateful to be here with you all, and yeah, thanks.
Thank you for your thoughts and experience as a leader and your path going to coaching. And we talked a lot about your research And could you just share what the most important facts for business people and coaches they could evaluate? And could they share the slides, or you could share
Sure.
them?
Yeah, why don't we start with, there's a couple of areas that I hoped to talk about today because it seemed the most relevant to the first part is about incivility, and we'll let me talk just a moment about that. So incivility is a word that describes the behaviors that happen in the workplace that disrupt or undermine a culture of safety. They're behaviors that destroy that. It's like a three-legged stool for connection. That's all about the pathway to engagement, which is what we're talking about today. So that three-legged stool of trust, care, and belonging, which is central to engaging and having an engaged team. So incivility is one of the pieces that undermines that culture. Before I have some slides that talk about the impact of that, but I just want to distinguish between a couple of kinds of incivility. One is focused incivility, and the other is unfocused. So unfocused incivility can often be just general disregard for others, showing up late to meetings, ignoring people, not greeting your coworkers, not responding to emails, leaving your workstation a mess, things like that. Focused incivility is often more targeted and can be more difficult to manage within the workplace. So, shaming coworkers in public or in front of clients, gossiping, the tone that happens in meetings, eye rolling or snickering, those are the kinds of things that can be problematic. So let's pop to the slide then. I'm going to try and share this. We practiced this earlier to make sure it works, but let's just see if we can make this happen. All right. How's that? Can you see that?
Yeah, perfect.
So one of the key problems with incivility is because it's often low level, not very detectable, ambiguous behavior. And it's hard to spot or identify right away. And we often, it's sort of this underground movement that that as leaders, we're often not equipped to deal with because it does sort of fly under the radar. And sometimes if you're like me, you might have trouble thinking on the spot, and it takes a while to practice to develop the tools and skills to deal with incivility. But here this slide really talks about what the impact of incivility is in the workplace. So this is a study of 800 managers and workers, and ignoring incivility allows it to continue to fester and destroy the workplace. So here we have some 25% of people studied took their frustration out from experiencing incivility on customers. 12% left their job because of the uncivil treatment. I hope I can't see that number there, but 78% reported commitment to the organization declined. 66% said their performance declined. 63% lost work time avoiding the offender, someone who did, upset them. 80% lost work time worrying about the incident. 38% chose to do lower quality work. 47% cut down on time spent at work, and 48% reduced their effort. So incivility is not a problem to be ignored. The consequences of it are significant. Here's the other important piece, which you would probably likely all know, that managing the incidents is expensive. So one incident can soak up weeks of attention. Interesting number here. Fortune 1000 firms stated that managers and executives spent 7 weeks a year mending employee relationships in the aftermath of incivility. And I can attest that that is absolutely true for me. That was one of the struggles, is that there's only so much time and energy resources to go around. And so there's a certain amount of discretionary time that allows for innovation or pursuing new projects. And when all of that is eaten by incivility, by the aftermath and the relationship issues that resolve, then you've spent everything you've got to move forward. So the opportunity cost of not dealing with incivility is significant. It's expensive. It's a lot of time. So what can be done about this? We all know leadership development, creating group norms, prioritizing civility in the hiring process. Those are all standard pieces of our approach to human resources. But I want to talk specifically about some of the other important ways that we can think about dealing with incivility. So creating a policy, having a policy that clearly articulates what's expected in the organization, but not just creating the policy, creating it together with your team, having your team be part of the process so that people think about, take ownership of, even that's transformative for the team. So when they're involved in creating, what do we expect? How do we want to live and work together well? Responding immediately to incivility is critical, or as soon as you can. It sometimes takes a while to get your head around it, but responding as soon as you can rather than waiting till the next performance review. Acknowledging the ambiguity of incidents and proceeding anyway. So, perhaps you're in a circumstance where someone constantly rolls their eyes across the table while someone's speaking. You responding to that as if it wasn't just a sneeze, as if it was something that was sort of breaching that politeness or carefulness is really important. This is we talk about the zero tolerance policy. So why is that? Why is this important? It's because incivility is like it's contagious. It oozes across your whole team. So treating it like when we think about in Canada, we have kids in a classroom have a peanut allergy. There's a zero tolerance policy for peanut butter or peanut butter sandwiches, anything with peanuts. So it is outlawed, strictly forbidden. A practical step is having a third party investigate if there's an issue, and proceed with coaching and mandated training for folks who are struggling with understanding how to behave with professional civility. The last point to talk about is if you have inherited an organization, or if you find yourself sort of years in and knowing that this underground incivility is a problem in your organization, it's never too late to start again. So I call this the SOS, the starting over strategy. Organizations need to draw a line in the sand and begin to make those changes. Absolutely critical to moving forward and to human flourishing, for the ability for people to enjoy and flourish in the workplace. Mm-hmm. I think that's as many bits we want to say about the slides, Gerda. Any questions?
I guess, could we stop for a moment to reflect, because you mentioned so many important things, yes? And sometimes I think these situations is really easy to analyze when we are not involved. But it gets difficult to notice or acknowledge when we are involved in these situations personally, yes? And the question that came to my mind is what could be particular obstacles for people to realize the real impact of their behavior on others. And maybe you or Brian, I know, also have some examples. We discussed, Brian, about arrogance, about some difficult situations. And I remember one of your examples about mediation you needed to take part in. Could you share with us?
Sure, sure. And they were very powerful slides, Heather, and incivility. It's a big, can get right in there and affect like the safety of folks and how they work. And how it undermines and can affect how the workplace. But and yes, thank you, Gerda, for that question. Well, there are several obstacles that can prevent leaders and managers from realizing the impact of their behavior on others. And okay, everybody's busy these days, but is that an excuse? So, but there are blind spots. Some managers and leaders have blind spots that prevent them possibly from recognizing the impact that they're having on others. Again, that could be down to self-awareness, which we'll touch on a little bit later. But that's what these blind spots can lead to. Lack of self-awareness, and then biases, unconscious biases. Then there can be communication barriers. Poor communication, which is a big one and can be inherent and can hinder leaders' ability to understand those that they are leading and they're working with and the impact of their behavior on others. And then hierarchy and power dynamics, like again, you mentioned arrogance. And yes, I did have a situation just recently where I was working in a dental practice. So to cut a long story short, what happened is there was a young dentist in a training situation with a senior dentist. Yes, what happened there was a significant communication breakdown. So what happened was the younger dentist became overwhelmed, felt unsupported and anxious due to the communication style from the senior dentist. And the senior dentist did not realize how she was impacting this young dentist plus others in her practice. So mediation had to come into place because the young dentist went off with mental well-being, which is probably an extreme form of what can happen if this incivility or not treating psychological safety, if that can happen. So anyhow, long story short, after the person when finished the younger dentist finished she was ill. It was a mediation process. I led the mediation, heard from one side, heard from the other side, and the feeling of being overwhelmed and unsupported and talked down to, it was astonishing. And misunderstandings and increased pressure, and then all these things can happen, stress, and then when that happens, what happens when stress happens, we can't function very well. So, and then on the senior dentist, self-awareness, maybe I'm not saying she didn't have self-awareness, but her perspective on the situation was entirely different. She acknowledged her role and how important she was training this young dentist, and didn't realize she was bullying her. There was actually a little arrogance around that. So anyhow, long story short, with that, what happened, mediation came to an end. Successfully, not successfully in the fact that the two parties could not meet each other face to face. That's how bad it was. But they went their separate directions. But I guess the point that I'm making is that comes down to the world of emotional intelligence, where self-awareness. If we're productive, we are present. If we're not productive, we're disconnected. And that's what happened in this case. The particular person did not have any self-awareness of how she was treating others, but then if she didn't have self-awareness how she was treating her emotions, how would she be able to recognize the emotions of others? And that's what happened. She wasn't aware of it. And so then the emotions of others, insensitive, wasn't being authentic, couldn't take feedback, no self-management, all of those things that come from emotional intelligence, and how that incivility that was filtering down led to quite an issue. So again, that's power dynamics that can help folks. And in this day and age, there's also time constraints. Is there enough time in the day that we can take and be aware of ourselves and aware of others? And then possibly lack of training and development. So as Heather had mentioned, in her slide training and development. We can work with that to whatever that might be, assessments and so on and so forth, and to have people becoming aware of how they're treating others and aware of themselves.
And thank you, Brian. And it's a feeling that organizations usually balancing between focus to efficiency and result and focus to humans. And both these questions are tightly related, yes? And Heather, you are exploring human flourishing, but not efficiency. Could you share why have you chosen this topic and why particular now it's important?
Sure. I just wanted to actually make one more comment on I was saying, in addition to self-awareness and sort of having this sort of zero tolerance policy for incivility, the second part of that is to remember that all behaviors mean something. So when we're communicating intentionally or not when we behave in a certain way. So paying attention to what's going on for folks with that behavior is super important. And so using that as a flag that directs your attention to behavior is super important. So I just want to make sure that, so not just denying the behavior, but paying attention to what's behind that is,
And sorry. Yeah, and just to follow up on that now, I guess I'm sure most people, I'm assuming you've heard it, but as Maya Angelou says, and this is a very powerful quote, and it says, the way you show up, that's the way others see you, determines the way people feel. And the way that they feel determines the extent to which they can engage. And that pretty much is everything about the outcome of the relationship with you. So how we show up impacts everything.
Great.
Okay. And I have some questions going, but maybe later a little bit we have a time to return to the questions. And Heather, I'd wish you to share your ideas about flourishing team, because I know that we could step a little bit forward talking about engagement and the essence of engagement. Could you share why have you chosen this topic, first of all?
Yes, for sure. Let me just quickly talk about what we mean by human flourishing, because it is a philosophical concept really that's under construction, in the same way that when we ask the question, what do we mean, what does happiness mean? We could answer that in many different ways, and people have tried to answer that succinctly for 3,000 years. So human flourishing is also not to be confused with happiness. Because happiness, in the way we think about it, often means prioritizing, my own desire for pleasure, and human flourishing is broader than that. It has to do with understanding ourselves and our values and our beliefs and our emotions. It has to do with our ability to grow, to have vision and dreams, and to experience agency in our life, and to be able to pursue that life with vigor. It has to do with our relationship with others, both to give and to receive care, to feel that we matter in the world, to prioritize the needs of others sometimes, and also to choose to prioritize ourselves and to understand why we do that. And then finally, it has something to do with how we show up in the world, our ability to lead through authenticity and vulnerability and all of those pieces. So it's a broad word or concept. And so human flourishing in the context of work, this research asks the question, how is it that work can sometimes diminish or destroy a human ability to flourish? Or how can it actually be a source of flourishing, which I believe that it can. I think in fact, in many ways, there are important parts of work and working life that might be the only source of flourishing in some particular ways for people. So I think we can absolutely do a better job of that, of creating workplaces that allow people to flourish. And that's important not just for folks who go to work every day, it's important for business, because in order to compete in the, this next phase of what business looks like, we have, a younger generation who are expecting more. They are expecting respect and kindness, and so we have to find a way to build flourishing into our teams, and in order to be sustainable into the future. Having an engaged team, having folks who are showing up at work with, all in, ready for the day, is critical. And the components of human flourishing are all things that we see showing up at work in different ways. And we'll talk a little bit about that. Does that answer your question? Should we?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
We talked about the time, how much people spend at work. Yes, and you have, could you share the slide?
Yes, I'll do that. See if I can do this. Okay. So this is an interesting slide. So what does what does work have to do with human flourishing? But we spend about 116,000 hours of the strongest years of our lives, either commuting to work, at work, or preparing to work. That is 60% of a working adult's waking hours. And yet almost 70% of workers are trying to leave their current job quietly and loudly. I'm sure you've heard of the sort of quiet quitting and loud quitting. And which means that there's really only approximately 30% of folks that are happy in their work. In Canada and the US, 52% of employees report being angry or stressed a lot of the day. Which those numbers are just are not acceptable. I don't think it's okay to have a world that that allows that human experience to be a normative. Work has a big role to play in how human beings are doing. So why does this matter to companies? This highlights several studies that really points to the bottom line is, workers are essentially only engaged in their work in that intentional, productive way about 30 to 35% of the time. So that means that's 3 hours in an 8.5-hour day when workers report being like all in and focused. Which tells you that there's significant room for improvement. So imagine if you were a manufacturer. Let's say you were manufacturing clothing, and you knew, and the things that you required to make the clothing, one of them was cotton that you bought. Imagine if only 30% of the cotton was useful, or imagine if you were, a bakery, and only 30% of the flour was useful, the rest was not usable. You would certainly begin to be asking why, and how could you improve that? I mean, that's an input of production, to talk about it in a way that's very instrumental, which is sometimes what, you know, shareholders and CEOs have to do. They have to justify. It's not just about the experience for human beings should be or ethically must be better. It matters because it's one of the things that people spend money on, and yet that organizations require, and yet folks are engaged 30% of the time. So it's not to say that you're going to have human beings being productive for 100% of the time. But imagine even if you could improve engagement by 20%, there's no additional cost to that other than improving the ways that folks experience their work. Imagine the impact of that. Anyway, it's critical for organizations to pay attention to why folks are only engaged in their work 30% of the time. Again, I want to say it doesn't, this also matters to human beings because nobody wants to spend their life living that way. Nobody wants to work for a few hours and then stare at their watch waiting for the day to be over, essentially, filling in the day, watching their life disappear. So that's important. I'll pop onto this slide. What does an engaged employee look like? We know all these. This is not new for anybody here. When we think about, hiring somebody who'd be engaged, this is the whole list of ways that we think about what that looks like. However, the thing we often don't consider is that we consider these as attributes of a person and not as consequences of a work environment. So you can take somebody who shows up, somebody you've hired who's enthusiastic and focused and committed and takes responsibility, and put them in an environment that is not conducive to human flourishing, and suddenly they are no longer that person. Anyway, it's important to think about that. Consequences of a work environment. That might be... I'll just keep going through these since we're on a roll, Gerda. I think we there are some simple, low-cost ways of improving people's experience at work. These are this slide just is meant to represent improving the relationships at work. So a few key points. We know that 83% of folks in this Harvard study reported that having friends at work was the most crucial element to a positive work culture. A best friend at work, if somebody has a best friend at work, they are 7 times more likely to be engaged in their jobs. And people who thought of their coworkers as friends were 95% satisfied with their work, compared to those who didn't think of their coworkers as friends, who were only 27% satisfied. So that tells you that the simple possibility of enabling friendships at work to form can increase your engagement. That doesn't, we could brainstorm 10 ways of creating opportunities for friendships to develop without it costing a lot of money. I guess this last slide before we go on to, when we'll pause then, I have, it's important, I think, to distinguish between different levels of engagement. So these are, I guess, so for my purposes, I've called this engagement versus investment. So engagement, we want folks to be engaged in that they come to work ready to, give it all they've got for, more than 30% of the day. But that focus in just engagement is often the focus on their own work, on building their career, on perhaps, putting in their hours, doing a good job, and then going home at the end of the day. Investment, or personal investment, has to do with the person being all in with the organization, seeing their future in the organization, seeing the accomplishments at work connects them to the team, having a long-term commitment, and being willing to go above and beyond, especially when there's a crisis. The team can count on you. So in my study, I'm paying attention to the differences between engagement and investment, and it applies certainly to senior managers, senior level folks. Organizations are looking for that kind of investment engagement rather than just engagement, but both are obviously important. Just want to distinguish them.
Yeah, thank you, Heather. And it is very interesting to hear about the difference, and our discussions was also very useful for me personally when we discussed, between differences between engagement with work or at work and engagement with people at work, what you have told. And it's already some comments following that, and of course it's disengagement continues to affect us when we leave our work environment. And if I could just in few words to share one situation I experienced, and let's call this person just a guy who participated in our coaching sessions, and she shared the feedback with the team. She said she had been working in the company for 10 years, and it was the first time during our coaching sessions when someone had listened to her so carefully. And she said, for the first time, I felt I'm really interesting for others, and my opinion really matters. And it was really a strong moment, and it was a real shift from engagement with work, because she was doing well, and it was a shift happened to engagement with team, what you call investment. Yes. And Brian, what comes, what thoughts come to your mind?
Well, again, what comes to my mind, and first of all, that fabulous word flourish, Heather, that's an amazing word for folks to flourish. And then it comes into teams, and for teams to flourish. And our employees often work in teams. And if they are teams, what is a team? And the environment within the team and within the groups of people have a significant impact on the actual results and the work within the teams, like with some of your statistics, Heather, are pointing out. So then, and the understanding team effectiveness requires then attention to characteristics and member attributes and all that good stuff. And so then the quality of the relationship, what with the quality of the relationships and team members, has a significant impact on the importance and engagement and the ability to innovate and all of that good stuff, which brings me to teams and the importance of working together with the team now. And so how do we do that? So first of all, I'm going to say that a little bit by an example it's an ongoing project that I'm working on now. So anyhow, I got a project. I was asked to do this project. It was a team building or team forming, and the folks maybe didn't understand the word team. So anyhow, this team was experiencing disharmony for about 12 to 18 months. Complaint was received. And it was investigated and responded to, and there was 2 people in this particular group. It was a home, it was a care home of 16 people, and the split right down the center between the manager and the assistant manager. So the request came in to me for support and team building. There was approximately 16 people in the team, so I went in to speak with them, and they thought maybe that this could be taken care of by a team building exercise, like climbing a mountain, half a mountain, and coming back down singing Kumbaya, and the whole thing's taken care of. But that is not what the team required, the team building required, because there was no team there. So that's what I went in to do, to help to build that team, so as they could flourish and do better and come back together again. So important thing about it was, so what did we do? So it was a solution-focused approach that I was following, and so we agreed on a contract for this team. So what do you want to do as a team? What was it about? and formed again with every team needs a charter with a purpose and values and mission and all that kind of good stuff that people can get motivated by and be attached to. So if there's no big team purpose, their team values, and mission, like where are they heading? So we're going through that process right now. So that was with one kind of a scenario. So clarifying objectives and reinforcing the creation of a safe environment and having the team work to form that so they can flourish, as Heather says. So building activities in and so on and so forth, encouraging reflection from everybody. And at the end of the day, trying to build respect and trust, which was missing, which are big things for encouraging or allowing people to flourish. Respect and trust and being psychologically safe. So I'm doing that. And then I've also another one that was with the BBC, something similar, and you wouldn't expect a big organization like that, but it was the same kind of a thing.
Okay. Thank you, Brian. And you tackled very important topics. And right now, guys, we have a real challenge because we have less than 10 minutes, and we have. I'd like Heather to share a little bit results of your research. But I remember last our conversation, and you mentioned that when you talked with managers, it was you said just a simple conversation, and or it was so simple to talk with them. And the topics that we are tackling couldn't seem so simple. And it's not always so simple to start such conversation. How would you say what's the most important to make the conversation simple and valuable?
I think approaching the conversation with both of your ears absolutely wide open, but also genuinely caring and listening and wanting to know the experience of the person you're engaging with. So we'll see if we get a chance here, sort of the domains or the areas that I've been exploring. And I think that people talked freely because no one really asks those questions in the workplace. No one really creates the opportunity to talk. And so quite honestly, I had scheduled sort of an hour meeting with each manager, and it easily grew to 2 hours. So that people talked because you were listening, because no one asks, and just created an opportunity.
And could you continue? Could you show us the results?
Sure.
And I guess we have 3 minutes to share the tool also that you use. So I guess it could be. Yeah, thank you.
Because it is really interesting. And let me just try to do this super quickly. Let's see, here we go. All right. This is the tool that I used, and these are the domains that I am exploring. I won't read them all to you. You can read them for yourselves, but the tool works like this. There's an inside part of the circle and an outside part of the circle. And so I would sit with managers for an hour or two and ask them about their experience of, for example, being known. So they would rate, we would talk, and they would rate their experience of being known in their job out of 10, give it a score of, some people would say, oh, I'm not known very well, 3. Some people would score it an 8. The outside of the circle, we would give it a rating of how important that was to them. What's their experience? What's the difference between how they wish their experience to be and what their real experience is? So, for example, being known, for some, they might say, well, that's really important to me, and I'd like that. That's a 9. I'd really like to be known at a level of 9. So there's a difference, which actually I've called a score for longing. So it's a positive thing where there's an energy that's reaching for something else. Then there's also, you'll see in a graph here, there's also, you know, discussions with the general manager to say, what is realistic for this organization? What are we hoping to offer or to provide in terms of experience for folks? So I'll show you a graph. The first one, just to let you see how the measurement looks, and then the next one had some really significant insights, and then a summary graph. I have a whole lot more graphs, but we don't have time for that today. But let's just have a look at. So
we'll make the second then for sure.
Yes. So this is the graph, for example, on meaning. It's not. This says that you know, the yellow line indicates the organization thought we'd like our folks to have an experience of meaning at work of around an 8. You know, that seemed like a reasonable target. They're not solving cancer. They are, you know, manufacturing. The green line indicates people's experience of meaning, and the blue line indicates their ideal, what they wish their experience could be. So where there's gaps, that shows some longing. And then the gap between the experience and the target is the opportunity for the organization to improve. So you'll see in the bar charts there that in meaning for leaders, so paying attention now to the far right hand bar opportunity, those are going to be indicators for the organization of ways that they could, things that they could focus on in order to improve flourishing and engagement, or flourishing and investment. This next slide I'll share just because this was a really powerful, there's some insights here that were powerful. One, you'll see that there are some big triangles and gaps that shows that there's diversity of experience. But right on the very end, I wonder if that arrow will come up. That data point was super important. This shows here mastery. So we're talking about mastery in your work, your sense of having achieved. The organization was struggling in one particular area, and in an area that was one particular person's responsibility. This data point here is from that person. It shows a low level of mastery, but also a low level of motivation to change that. So it's a situation where the person thought, I'm not doing this so well, but also I don't really care. So we had a conversation about that, led to a coaching conversation about, are you in the right role? And you know, the person said, I'm not a quitter. And I said, well, where does that come from? He said, my dad. And I said, well, you might want to think about that. So, you know, consider that. So anyway, he has since, you know, transferred to a new department, pursued a new job, because he was able to gain some self-awareness from that conversation. Let me just quickly go to the last slide, which summarizes the research. So the height of the bars indicates the opportunity for the organization, the key things to focus on. So for this organization, the big 4, there are mastery, belonging, trust, and care. That was true across the board for folks in many ways. And this is new stuff for the organization to pay attention to. They are manufacturing and thinking about care, trust, and belonging is a new territory. So we're working together to explore that and to build pathways forward to improve in those areas. I think I've talked over my time.
Okay. So thank you, Heather, so much. We have no time left for any comments, but we have time left for the most important sentence. What's need to be said right now? One sentence, Brian, Heather.
Organizations need to focus on helping people to feel as if they matter. Bottom line.
Thank you.
People.
Thank you. And Brian.
And for me, emotional intelligence, be aware of yourself, aware of others, because that can lead to engagement. That's what leads to engagement. And also look for our purpose, our mission, our vision and our values. That will get us there.
Okay. So thank you so much. And my last sentence would be thank you for our audience. You have our contact. If you wish to receive the slides or to receive more information or to contact any of us, or you could do this during LinkedIn or email or whatever you choose. And sorry that we haven't time left to reply to your comments and questions, but we do hope we'll meet other time, and we'll waiting for you in other ICF Lithuania or ICF global events. So thank you for today.